Hi, I'm James Eade of the Eade Foundation. You can call me Jim. And this is the Chess Files. The answers are out there. I want to tell you a little bit about the Eade Foundation. We're trying to build communities through chess. Wherever you are, whatever language you speak, wherever you're from, it just doesn't matter. If you play chess, you can be part of a chess community. And if you're part of a chess community, or any community, you're never alone. So we can help you learn to play chess. We can help you connect to other people who play chess. And that's what the Eade Foundation is all about. But today's question for the Chess Files, the answers are out there, is what does it mean to be a chess consultant? Because I was watching the Queen's Gambit, which is very popular on Netflix right now. And I saw that the credits were rolling, there was a chess consultant. And I said, hey, why wasn't I asked? I mean, you know, don't they know who I am? And so I was thinking, what makes a chess consultant? And so I got over my resentment towards these guys, and I said, okay, let's bring a chess consultant on and let him tell us what that's really about. So I would like to welcome Bruce Pandolfini onto the Chess Files. How are you, Bruce?
I'm fine. I think I'm fine, Jim.
Okay.
Depends how snarky you're going to be.
We'll tell you at the end of the show. The viewer.
I'll try my.
Yes. So Bruce, I noticed that you were a consultant for the Queen's Gambit, and I know that you were a consultant for Searching for Bobby Fischer, which I thought was the first movie that I ever saw that had an excellent portrayal of what it is to be in a chess competition. And I thought the Queen's Gambit had it nailed. Everybody's going to nitpick here and there, but I thought you guys did a great job. And so how did they pick you, and what was your role in making those films and series?
Well, it's who I knew, really. I had worked with Bill Holberg before, who was producer on Searching for Bobby Fischer. So naturally, it went to me to start with. So that's how I got involved in the Queen's Gambit. As far as what I did as a consultant, well, I'm not sure. Maybe we should ask Gary Kasparov what he did. Because he was also a consultant.
Yes, I know, but I haven't yet been able to book him. I haven't gotten past his administrative assistant.
You should have given me a call.
Yeah. Okay. Now I got the contact. So, but I'm sure you had to correct Gary a couple of times during about the chess matters.
Yeah. Well, I think it started many years ago, not just with Searching for Bobby Fischer. Even before then, I happened to be the consultant for the novel, The Queen's Gambit. I was a Random House consultant, so I had to work on that.
You knew the author Travis?
Oh, I worked with him extensively.
Well, yeah. He was a great writer. He had other wonderful works that I'm blanking on right now, but he was very well known. So
yes, The Color of Money, The Man Who Fell to Earth. He was a really fine writer and screenwriter. I got to see his manuscript in the summer of 1982, his essentially completed manuscript. And I thought it was wonderful. I really thought that Beth Harmon was a fantastic character. And I thought the novel had a lot of promise. But I thought there were some problems with some of the chess moves. They weren't quite right. And so I was meeting with Walter and his editor, Anne Friedgood at Random House. And I more or less said that. And I thought I could perhaps help him change some of that. Walter was dead set against it. He didn't want to do that. First of all, he thought I would in some way destroy the narrative or the storyline, right, and the literary quality of the book.
Right.
Plus, he was a chess player himself. He didn't need any help. This was his way of looking at it.
We are all egomaniacs in that way, yes. I know
So
it all.
we would,
Why do I need a consultant?
yeah, yeah. So we were saying goodbye in the office, and as I was leaving, for whatever reason, I suggested what the title should be of the manuscript of the new book. And suddenly his editor said, "Well, let's talk a bit more about this." And we did. And 30 minutes or so went by, and suddenly I was hired to be the consultant on what would then be called the Queen's Gambit.
That is
So,
such a great story. I
yeah,
didn't know that part of it, how slim the thread was that you held on to. You were almost out the door.
yeah. For some reason, I just threw that out there,
Yeah.
and it intrigued the editor. And Walter agreed to it. I think he didn't want to do it also because he'd have to pay me something
Oh,
in addition to Random House. But I worked with him for 8 to 10 sessions in his home. We became friends, and I did wind up suggesting various changes, and he was going to implement them. He even gave me a nice credit in his acknowledgments. And then a year later, of course, he passed away, sadly. And I read the book again, and I found he hadn't put any of those changes in there at all, maybe a few trivial ones. So the only thing I really gave to the book in the end was the title.
Okay. Well, that's still a contribution. The fact that you got to work with him must have been special too.
Oh yeah, there were all kinds of interesting things that happened. I was over there one time, and he took a call from Paul Newman, the actor, and he got off the phone and said, "You know what? They're gonna do The Color of Money. Newman's gonna do it, but they have this new guy. You ever hear of Tom Cruise?"
Yeah. He's a little short guy.
So things like that would happen, you know. And I was even going to give them chess lessons, but it never took place. They never happened.
Right. Yeah. Very sad ending. And I guess you actually taught Josh Waitskin, who is the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was based on him and his dad, Fred. So you had a relationship with them. So that was your other in.
Right. And of course, we've stayed good friends through the years. Josh was a very special talent. Fred's book, Searching for Bobby Fischer, is just fantastic. It's a great book.
Yes.
I feel it's the best chess book ever written. So
yeah, he's also a great
for dummies. You know, I put that up there high. But
thank you very much for that. Oh, I just have a copy handy. I don't know what was doing there, but now they mentioned it.
Actually, Chess for Dummies is a good book. I've always admired it. Very good book.
I appreciate that very much because I can't get higher praise from one of the best known and most accomplished chess teachers. And that's really how you self-identify, isn't it, Bruce, as a chess teacher?
Yeah.
Rather than as a chess consultant?
Yeah, I'm just a chess teacher. I've been doing this now for 48 years. Actually, we're into the 49th year. I was thinking I'd go 50 years. We'll see if we can make that. And then I'll reassess the whole situation. You know, I got involved back in '72 with the Fischer-Spassky match.
Right.
Just a short story. I was working at the Strand bookstore at the time, behind the counter at the register. And this man brought about 10 books or so to the counter and placed them on. They were all chess books. He was going to purchase them, and we got into a conversation, and it lasted about 5 minutes. A few days later, I received this call, and it was from him, and he was inviting me to be an analyst joining Shelby Lyman, covering the World Championship match on PBS. He was the chief producer at 13. It was totally random. He liked the few things I said behind the counter, and that's how I got into being a chess teacher from that little exchange.
Yeah, the slimmest of threads, and
you're accidental.
Yeah, that is a fascinating thing. So keep hope out there. If things are not going the way you want to in your life, they can change in an instant based on a thread. Somebody pulls it, somebody doesn't, and next thing you know, you're a consultant.
Well, I think I've been very lucky. I've been at the right place at the right time any number of times. I have had to work hard.
Yes.
I do work very hard, but I've also been very lucky, and I know that.
Well, I think we all can take too much credit for our own successes in life, even if whatever we term success, and we have to always be humble enough to admit it could have gone another way. We're just lucky. We just got lucky sometimes.
Certainly
And,
true in my case.
yes, and mine as well. So I always think that, the idea of being a chess teacher must seem easy, but it is not easy. Having done it, not anywhere near at the level that you had done, but I have taught in schools, I taught students of all ages, I taught at senior centers, and you do have to be prepared going in. You have to be coherent during the lesson, and you also have to pay attention to the student because you have to meet them where they're at, not where you want them to be.
Right. Yeah. I always try to understand the student first. I don't really come in with anything in particular for the first session or two. I'm trying to get a sense for who they are. Then I can cater material around them and work on what I think needs to be done to help them be better players. But everyone is different. I know it's a trivial thing to say,
Yeah,
but it's also true.
yes.
And I've also viewed myself as a kind of therapist where I'm trying to really get into the head of my students. And I keep records on them. I have diaries on my students going back to 1972. I have thousands and thousands of entries writing out what happened and what transpired during the sessions, what I think should be done. I'm not as meticulous anymore. I don't do it as much. It's much harder at my age, but I still do. I consider it somewhat. I was a scientist, a teaching scientist, and I had to keep records because you could learn better and get a greater overview of things if you have such records. It's easy to forget.
And do you review them as well?
Oh yeah.
Because I would think that is part of the learning process for yourself as a teacher, is to go over what you did, whether it was successful or not, what you might have done differently.
Absolutely. I would recommend that to all aspiring teachers, by the way, that they keep diaries and records on their students and invest the time in the evening to keep that journal going. It can be invaluable. It can really be helpful. So, yeah. By the way, if you hear my phone going off in the background a few times, forgive me.
That's okay.
Barraged by these messages.
Yes, well, I assume that it's if it's Hollywood, you'll take it.
I don't even look. I put my glasses on. I don't want to do that.
So I have you for the half hour all to myself. It's a
glorious. It was 4 minutes. We were going to agree to a 4-minute session. What is this? What kind of trickery is this?
This is the next thing you got to know about me. I'm never telling the truth. Come in for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. It'll just be over in no time. Oh, 30 minutes later, you're still talking to me. You're a fish and I'm reeling you in.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
But Bruce, I have to tell you, this is one of the things I've never heard teachers teaching other teachers how to teach chess. This is one of the things I've talked with David McElnulty about. How do you teach chess players to teach? And recording a journal, keeping a diary, that might be one of the things that we put into the script. Is like, that might be one of the things that we can teach other people to do. So I'm very grateful to you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
And it proved invaluable for yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes, through the years. I've gained a lot from it. My students have. I perceived mistakes over time I was making. What? I'm still doing that? I hadn't corrected that yet? Right. Or I didn't pick up on that? So all kinds of useful information can stem from those kind of records.
Can you give me one example of an insight that gave you, that you altered your behavior going forward? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, and I probably won't answer it very well. I think certainly in the beginning, I had to rely on something, and so I featured the end game in some of my sessions because I knew it better. And I would branch out from there. I hated the opening. I think that's why I didn't teach the opening so much.
Yes.
I could give some fancy arguments about Capablanca and Tarish and Lasker advocating the end game, and all of that would be true. But in the end, I simply didn't like the opening, which is why I veered away from it. I didn't know enough. I mean, not really. Although, of course, you have to help students in every sense, all phases of their game, whatever their weak in, whatever you think they need to be supplemented with regard to, you have to help them. So that may include working on their openings. Of course, they have to be prepared. And I would pick up on these things, that the fact that I loved the end game so much, it suddenly occurred to me, well, I'm neglecting this phase or that, even though I've made notes to the effect that this student needs to work on that.
Yes.
At some point, it made me realize I had to be more sensitive to what I was actually writing and not being mechanical about it.
See, that's a brilliant answer. I can relate to that on so many levels, because for a long time I played B3 as my first move because I just hated the opening theory. I didn't want to spend the time on it, and I didn't want some Russian grandmaster move to beat me in an opening because the opponent playing against me knew the Russian grandmaster move from some periodical that I didn't subscribe to. I just wanted to play chess, get a playable middle game. And so that was my approach too. And then you find that different people are different from you, and they have a different approach. And some people like the opening. Some people are all tactics. And you have to kind of, if you're all tactics, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about positional play. Or if you're like yourself, you like the endings, let's talk about a little something else.
Well, I think there's no one way to teach chess.
Right.
A lot of it's based on personality, and it's important to maybe rely on your strengths at first. You'll wind up conveying your love for the subject matter, and that will be infectious, and you'll get the student, further interested. His or her own passion will come out. So I think it's okay to go with your own interest, as long as you don't neglect your student when you pick up and perceive certain things. You have to be sensitive. Sometimes you have to go against the grain and show things that you're not particularly versed on. That's what a good teacher does. It's easy to teach a talented person because that person will survive your bad efforts no matter what.
Right.
And will rise to the top. It's those who aren't as talented that need the help and the advice and the good teaching. One of the most important things a teacher can show students, I think, is that you don't really need the teacher. If you can impart that somehow, in the end, you can do it all on your own. If you find the way, the energy, and the love for the subject matter. So I try to put that message across. You don't really need me. I'll be here for you, but you don't need me.
This is a life lesson, Bruce. I'm so grateful for you for bringing that up, because that's what my dad taught me, was don't wait for someone to teach you, teach yourself. And when you and I were growing up, we didn't have chess teachers, or maybe you did, I didn't. But
No.
We were autodidacts. We taught ourselves, and so
Right.
that was the way it had to be for us. We didn't have these marvelous things that are out there for the younger people today. But I think your message is really spot on, in that people should teach themselves. They were responsible for their own learning. But a teacher such as yourself that shows compassion and empathy for the student can spot something that the student can't spot for themselves. And that's where you can play a critical role in their development.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A good teacher is somewhat of an empath. You can sense what the other person is feeling, and you try to capitalize on that to his or her advantage. One thing that's always raised is, should you be an active player as a teacher? This is a question that I've reviewed many times myself. I feel that it can be counterproductive if you're too much a player and a teacher at the same time. Because when you're teaching, you're trying to help someone. And when you're playing, in a sense, you're trying to hurt someone. And on an unconscious level, the other side of that will come out. When you're teaching someone, your competitive nature may come out, and you won't be as helpful as you could be. And when you're playing, your teaching nature may come out, if you do a lot of that, and you'll be too soft when you have to be hard and tough. So I'm not sure you should be incredibly active as a teacher. Certainly you want to constantly use your mind, analyze, look at problems, review what's important in the world of chess. Of course, that's something else. But being a serious competitor is another matter altogether. I'm not saying it can't be done, but very often it doesn't work out.
I think that's really another gem that you've tossed out to the show, because I have found that to be the case myself. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you want your student to get this good, but not that good, where you're actually afraid that your student is going to be the teacher someday. But you know, as a teacher, you can also say, well, good for you. Now you know more than I do. I can't help you anymore. And
right.
You know, so, but the competitor versus the teacher is a very important discussion to have.
So some people maybe can walk that fine line, but I think it's very difficult. I know one really, grandmaster, fine player who does a lot of teaching, of course, and he won't show his students certain lines, some of his pet lines. He doesn't want to give out any of his knowledge that could be possibly used against him someday. Well, that's going to hinder him as a teacher somewhat.
Yes.
Notice I don't mention anyone. I don't give any particular names.
Right. No, that's wise of you. I think that the idea that we want to do here is talk about how to become the best teacher you can be. And not everybody is going to be like one another when it comes to teaching. There is no one way to teach chess.
No,
and there is
no
no
way
for you to be the best teacher you can be. But
right.
these are guidelines to help you select, is this really my role? Should I be a teacher at all? Because really I'm about crushing my opponent's ego. That's what I like. So be a player.
Yeah, which is beautiful. Be a player.
Yeah.
The game is about playing. As far as students, what do I recommend to anyone who wants to improve? Play serious chess, as challenging as you can get on a regular basis, and analyze those games.
Especially your losses, for me.
Even your wins. You think, well, I played well. I love it when students bring, they only want to show victories.
Yes, yes.
But I tear those games apart because they think they played well just because they've won.
Yes.
We all know you can play wonderfully and lose, and play very badly and come away with the point.
Yes.
So,
and you can play 20 good moves and one bad one will ruin it.
Well, you can be tougher on them when they've won. It's hard to be hard on difficult or present a tough message when they've lost. They're hurting, they're in pain. But when they've won and they're being arrogant and very proud about really bad play just because they've won, big deal. I can bring points out and be much tougher because they're buffered by the fact that they've won.
Well, and there is this myth in chess that we're all, so egocentric and strong-minded that will inflict our will onto you. But there are good chess players, very good chess players, that aren't that way at all. So, if you want to become a good chess player, you don't have to be this focused person on winning at all costs. You can be a complete human being and still play chess well. And
I've been told that so.
You haven't seen evidence of that?
No, I agree with you, by the way.
Good.
Again, yeah, all kinds of natures are evinced by strong chess players.
Yes.
From terribly asocial to voluble and enjoying people, being soft, being hard. You get the whole range.
Right. I agree.
Of human emotion.
And that's why, a series like the Queen's Gambit gets chess more popular. And what we're up against is this stereotype of the chess player. And we know from our personal experiences that there is no such stereotype. They come in all different types and sizes.
They certainly do.
Yes. So I have to ask you a personal question, Bruce. There was one thing that I read about you. I can't remember the source. And I came up against this, so it resonated with me. When you were playing somebody and you felt like you wanted to draw and not win, and it kind of turned you off from competitive chess because you would be comfortable drawing the person because then there's no winner loser. But if you had to win, then there was a loser, and their less better natures would come out.
Listen, no one likes to lose, Jim. No one likes to lose. Most of us like to win. I like to win too, but I don't like to win enough to have poured my life into it. So there wasn't enough in there for me to attempt to be a really good player. I guess I got to be a decent player, but there was a limit to it. It wasn't going to go beyond a point. And when I got involved in the PBS coverage, I was no longer a player. I was trying to be a poet. I took my poetry very seriously. I had a small collection of about 50 poems. It turned out they weren't very good. It took me a while to realize that. And so I eventually abandoned the activity or the attempt to be some kind of writer, and got involved in chess teaching, which I've loved. And I've been so happy to have done it. But it happened all by accident.
Yeah. Some of these things in life, that's the way they happened. It seems like an accident, but maybe it was meant to be. Who knows? These are the kinds of questions we can't wrestle with.
Yeah, the chess cards were on my side that day somehow.
Yes, yes. And I've written a number of poems too, but I haven't given up on the idea that I could be a poet because I have never shown them to.
Well, I made the mistake of showing him to a very serious poet.
Yeah.
Very serious, and that was a little detrimental
to this idea. Because I seriously thought I was going to be the next Bobby Fischer. I was so good, so young. I was going to be the next Bobby Fischer. Then I went to New York and I was playing chess tournaments with guys my age that were better. And it was like a serious wake-up call. Hey, Jim, maybe not. Maybe you're not going to be the next Bobby Fischer. And I count my blessings that I'm not. But, these are the things that we don't know the future. We can't predict it, but we keep trying, keep showing up every day. And who knows what thread we're going to pull on today that might just change our lives. And you're a living example of that. Working behind the counter, someone shows up and you have a 5-minute conversation. Next thing you know, you're on the Shelby Lyman show.
Right. Now, I wasn't on very much on Shelby Lyman's show. And Shelby did the lion's share of that. And he was wonderful, by the way. It was really, at that point, I don't think anyone could have done as well as Shelby. There was something very natural about him. Even his mistakes were charming. Right? We kind of identified with it.
Yeah.
I think that was partly the appeal of the show. Obviously, the great lore was Bobby Fischer.
Yes.
But the confrontation with Boris Spassky and the Russian system. But there was also something that we could reach out to in Shelby, and the fact that none of us were professional television people.
Right.
That was another thing.
Were you on more often than Steve Brandwein?
Oh, yeah. Steve Brandwein's only on one time.
I know.
That was a famous incident.
Yes.
Steve and Shelby lived together at one point. They're both from Massachusetts, or they went to school there together and knew each other. I'm not sure the exact details. Maybe Harvard or MIT. I think Shelby went to Harvard. I think, did Steve go to Harvard? I'm not sure. He was certainly in the Boston area.
Yeah, he did have the Boston roots, but he lived in Seattle. He lived in New York. He lived in San Francisco. So he was in every town kind of player.
Right. He was very outspoken.
Yes.
But everyone loved Steve. He had just winning personality. He knew something about everything.
Absolutely.
Steve knew something about everything. You couldn't mention a thing he didn't know something about.
We have chess databases now, but before chess databases, we had Steve. He remembered every game.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was very funny. He was a great speed player. Steve was a great, much better than his actual playing strength. He was like at least a full class better, maybe more.
Yeah. I
almost as good as Zuckerman, but almost as good.
Yeah. I felt it was a moral victory when I drew him in speed chess.
Yeah, he was very, very good.
Yeah. I was like,
anyway, so happy. He came on the show. And Shelby posed some question. I forget what it was, of course, it was many years ago. But Steve's answer took the form of something like, this is very interesting. It reminds me of something that Mad Dog Kissinger said, which is an insult to the Secretary of State.
Yes,
and immediately,
yes.
There was panic on the show. They went to a blank screen, and Steve disappeared. You weren't going to see him anymore. And the apology had to come from PBS. Shelby was furious with him. They were good friends. How could you do this to me? He said.
And Steve was just being Steve. Yeah. No, yeah, I got to know him later in his life, and he was one of the people that I went to the Mechanics Institute to see. And sometimes we played blitz, but sometimes we just talked because he could talk about anything. He was so well read.
Yeah, he was a chess icon.
Yes.
And many of his conversations get back to Marxism. He was a Marxist, by the way, and we would. In those days, that's one of the things we talked about. I was living in Berkeley, and Steve was there, and we. Well, you know the story.
I do. I lived it too. So, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We've learned a little bit about being a chess consultant, get lucky, and then about being a chess teacher. And I think some of your advice to teachers: keep a journal, keep a diary, and think about the person you're coaching. Do not impose your will on them. Find out what they need from you. And I think you've said that so eloquently, and I can't tell you, it's a tip of the cap to you, Bruce. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Coming from you, I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take you backstage now. You hang out there, and I'll talk to you later.
Very good. Be well.
And that was Bruce Pandolfini, and it's a feather in my cap having him on this show. But this has been the Chess Files. The answers are out there. And if you want to play chess, you can join the chess community. And if you join the chess community, or any community, you'll never be alone. Now, this Chess Files is once a week, so we will see you on the same channel at the same time